Hello. I want to welcome you all to today's webcast entitled Accelerating Improvements in the Constituent Experience Through APIs. I'm Sean McSpaden, and I serve as a Senior Fellow for the Center for Digital Government. I'm very excited to host today's webcast, and of course want to thank you for joining us. I believe we're going to have a great session over the next 30 minutes or so. We do have a few housekeeping notes for you on the screen. Also, during today's webcast, you will be able to connect with your peers via LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. For those of you on Twitter, please use the hashtag GovTechLive to share key takeaways, quotes, and learnings from today's webcast. Joining me today to discuss this topic are Ethan Cunningham and Bill Riles. Ethan serves as the Director of Product Management and Alliances at PayIt. Ethan is on a mission to create best-in-class experiences for customers. Ethan's a graduate of the University of Georgia. He has specialized in UX and UI product management for over a decade to make it easier for end users to interact with NGOs, financial institutions, and a variety of government agencies. As a director of product for PayIt, Ethan specializes in human-centered design and product principles to ensure that every voice is accounted for during the product creation process, which leads to greater adoption, higher product stickiness, so to speak, and top-rated customer satisfaction. I'm also pleased to introduce Bill Riles. Bill serves as a Senior Fellow for the Center for Digital Government, and importantly, as a professor and associate director, actually the department chair of the Tulane University School of Professional Advancement, IT, and Cybersecurity program. Bill focuses on continually delivering and updating the program curriculum based on innovative and emerging technologies. Before transitioning to academia and higher education, Bill had a diverse career in the GovTech space, delivering value to state agencies, local governments, and law enforcement agencies throughout the state of Mississippi. So I want to set the stage for our discussion today. Everyone wants to improve the constituent experience for residents accessing public services. Upgrading IT infrastructure, back office systems, and user experiences is at the heart of most conversations surrounding the modernization of state and local governments. While it may feel almost impossible to make the leap to digital modernization, an application programming interface, or API, can help governments quickly improve service delivery without overhauling those legacy systems. APIs can help bring any service or transaction online in one easy-to-use interface, improving constituent experiences and accelerating revenue collection and disbursement. Separating the resident experience from the back-office system of record is the first step in modernization. This webinar will equip you and your colleagues to fearlessly drive resident digital engagement at a much faster pace than you ever thought possible. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll learn together about how APIs can help governments streamline services and electronic payments. We'll also explore how leveraging a digital government and payments platform can integrate into any back office system and automate any government workflow and their associated payments. Also, we'll learn to how these APIs give residents a consumer-grade experience, and finally, how they provide detailed transaction reporting. At this point, I'd like to turn things over to Bill Riles. Bill?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me, and thank you for those opening comments and commentary of kind of setting the stage what we're talking about. And I can't agree with you more, especially on the points about APIs allows for this rapid modernization of technology. You know, we've seen that a lot. You know, I love being a technologist right now. There's lots of change, lots of innovation. The digital transformation is really pushed forward. I think we can all agree that the past 2 years, we saw the largest amount of government transformation in history that we've seen. And it's due to the pandemic, but there's a silver lining as well. All this rapid modernization, these things that we never thought we could do. Because we had to keep government services running, we were kind of forced into a modernization standpoint. From a technology perspective, the past 2 years will now be known for only just for a disruption, but also a transformation. And that's what I'm most excited about. Many state and local government agencies had to quickly pivot applications online for mobile, remote, and virtual because of the pandemic. But in my opinion, and something we're going to talk about today, is that this won't be the exception, but actually the new norm, the expectations of what government IT can do. So we have to accept that we're in a new era of IT government services. But going back to the pandemic and kind of how we got here, the pandemic highlighted many issues like siloed, inflexible systems that are unable to scale, and the dependence upon manual processes, dependence upon older legacy hardware, dependence upon human interactions. A lot of these things required the citizen to go several different places, several different systems, and to repeat steps multiple times to take care of their government business. This was highlighted then, and we're starting to look at how can we get better and not repeat this. Also, many cybersecurity issues were brought to light that prompted these modernization efforts. With these lessons learned, now we're in the post-pandemic phase planning to what can we do better. The government IT offices were exploring ways to harness these flexible, customizable technology options. Like you mentioned, customized API use to highlight this. It gives the better agility to meet the increased interactions with all of our citizens, whether they're remote or in person. Like you mentioned, and I talked about earlier, Sean, that a lot of factors impact the need for this modernization for IT projects. It could be cyber or risk, it could be efficiency in operations, and overall customer service. So I kind of want to dive into that customer service factor. One of the main reasons for this is because the business needs are changing, the government business needs. Citizen expectations are evolving. They're driven by customer needs and factors such as the need for self-service, online government services, and just rapid innovation is becoming a common expectation by citizens. Our citizens of our government services expect this. You know, during my opinion, the CIOs and the IT offices for state and local government alike actually saved government. We stepped up to the plate and we saved government, which is great. We can take this as a win. We can high five. But now the issue is the citizens expect that to continue. They know we can do it. Historically, government IT has always been known for a little bit behind on technology. Well, we proved we can do it. We proved we can innovate fast. Now they expect that same level of service to continue and get better. They want their government services at the same customer service issues and resolutions as they would get from leading private sector companies. And they want their government service to deliver with free second-day prime shipping and with everything around it. And one thing that's important in this conversation is that the average constituent doesn't care where the service is coming from. And with the way state government and local government is situated, there's a lot of different factors. There's elected officials and departments and councils and all this kind of stuff. But the citizen really doesn't care or want to know or even need to know. They don't care if they're trying to get a permit license, if it comes from the Department of Human Services, Department of Environmental Quality, it doesn't really matter. APIs and a good API infrastructure will allow for this type of interaction to be transparent to the overall citizen experience to get them what they need. Now that we're in this post-pandemic planning phase, we're implementing modernization of technology, we, the state and local government community, have a prime opportunity to redesign and these difficult to navigate processes to better meet the needs of both citizens and internal employees. In all of this rapid modernization, one important factor I mentioned earlier is this citizen experience. The pandemic response was one of the first times that many government agencies had a hard look at citizen experience. Some of the tools and techniques commonly used in the private sector, like journey maps, customer personas, product delivery, and product management that are common in the private sector were starting to be considered and implemented in the government sector. This digital transformation puts the user experience first and then the technology around it. Historically, the way we did technology in government, the IT system, the CIO or the IT director, the IT organization would decide that we need a new piece of technology, a technology project. And then we would go out and implement that. Government, sometimes it takes, 18 months, 2 years, or, what doesn't really matter. But we would go out, we would spend decades and times and years and months, all the system requirements, and we get to the final end. We put it in. It's an implementation. It's go live, and then now there's an educational campaign. We got to go train people how to use it. We got to train our internal employees, but then we have an education awareness campaign with the public. This is how you interact with us now. We got this new system that does X, Y, Z. But I would argue it should be the other way around now. Start with the citizen experience first. What does the citizen experience need? What is the user requirements? And then we build the technology to meet that need versus the other way around. So we have to take this opportunity to look beyond the traditional deployment of IT systems to find better ways to interact. And it's difficult because how do we do that with these legacy systems we have in place? Every agency, everyone on this call, we have legacy systems where it's difficult to do a lift and shift. We can't just uproot it, throw it away, and bring in new stuff. It's very disruptive to do that. It's risky. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of time. There's a lot of data silos. There's some dependencies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With the use of advanced APIs, as you mentioned, Sean, we don't have to do that. We don't have to lift and shift everything. We can customize the front ends to allow for a better user experience and still keep the back end data as it is. New front ends can be developed with user-rich features while keeping the back end the same that the government agencies used to doing. We can do this by decoupling the user front end from the legacy back end. In most cases, not all, but most cases that I've seen, the mainframes and the legacy databases and the internal systems that everybody's used to using, they work fine. They do the needful. The data is there, the transaction works well, but the problem is that user experience, how the user can interact with it. User don't want to interact with the old green screen, but the data is sound and secure. And also the government skill sets, we don't really have this. I mentioned earlier these persona maps and journey maps and personas and things like that. We're not there yet. I was at a conference yesterday, a government conference, and I was speaking, and I always like to, hey, raise your hand and where you are with this. So I did a question about waterfall versus agile. I said, okay, how many in project management here? How many people your agencies are implementing, agile? And how over about 70% of the room raise their hand. If I asked that same question a year ago, it would have probably been 50%. 2 years ago, it would have been 30, and 3 or 4 years ago, only about 3 or 4 people would have raised their hand. But we can see that trend going towards agile. So I asked the same question. How many in this audience today, these are all state and local government IT leaders, so like we have on the call, have a product management office, not a project management, a product management that does these kind of things we're talking about? Not a single person raised their hand. I said, okay, my prediction is I'm going to ask this same question next year. I bet you there's going to be a few. You fast forward 2 or 3 years, over half the room is going to be going into that direction. So that's kind of where we're headed. And I think now is the opportunity to partner with UI and UX experts, because we know that's something we don't do. We don't have that. In my experience, not a single person raised their hand. So we can partner with experts that will help us build these APIs to our back-end systems to make our existing systems more efficient. And I think that's going to become best practice moving forward. So this is going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to learning more and talking about this in the rest of this webinar today. Thank you, Sean.
About that, Bill. I don't want to move forward to that next slide before I thank you for your thoughtful comments about where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed, and the kinds of things that we need to focus on, and that based on your experience, our colleagues in state and local government across the country are really beginning to think about how to change, how to transform their operations. So thank you for kicking us off today. So I want to keep things moving, though. Want to engage our audience. Looks like we've got a great attendance today. For our first poll question, I'd like to ask our audience to record your responses. The question is, what's the biggest driver for digital modernization at your agency, regardless of jurisdiction? You can see the 3 potential responses there: to improve customer service, to streamline processing and reconciliation, or to improve security and risk management. So if you could record those responses, and then in a second or two, I'll share what everybody thinks. All right, let's see where we are with this particular question on digital modernization. Well, that's great. It looks like we've got an even split between improving customer service and streamlining processing and reconciliation. It seems people really do recognize this dramatic need to both focus on our employees, how our processes need to change, become streamlined to help our workforce be more efficient and effective. And clearly, the top level answer is to improve customer service, as you mentioned, Bill, to really, instead of the age-old inside-out kind of development and deployment of information systems, we really need to take that perspective, look at ourselves from the outside, from the eyes of our customers. So with that, I do want to move forward, and I'd like to hand things off to Ethan. Ethan, are you ready to kind of share your opening remarks and the great content that you've prepared from PayIt?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sean. And Bill, incredible intro. I think that's going to be really helpful as a segue into the rest of the conversation. So I'll keep this light. I've got one slide in here that gets a little into the weeds, but I promise it's a Friday afternoon for most of the country. So we'll keep this pretty fun for today. Before I jump into a lot of the content, I wanted to talk about who PayIt is a bit and give you some context. You know, Bill mentioned earlier some of the personas and the drivers that we have in order to create great API experiences. So I'll dive into that a little bit as well. But before I do, to talk about PayIt a bit, we were started roughly a decade ago. And since our inception, our mission has been to create incredible citizen experiences for not only our citizen users, but also our agency admin users as well. We do that through working with our agencies to understand what are the areas of your market that you want to digitize or improve that customer experience, improve some of those processes in order to create easy workflows within our platform that allow users to jump in, very quickly take advantage of what they need to do, make a payment in order to satisfy whatever that objective is, and ultimately work with our agencies to remit those funds to them. We do this in a couple of key areas. We do this in property tax, utilities, DMV, courts and citations, even licensing and tolling as well. So really, there's nothing that's off limits for us to better understand how can we create an incredible experience around this, and how can we make this as easy for our agencies who are going through some of that digital transformation or trying to improve some of that customer experience through our leading implementation teams. We do this through all sorts of levels of government. So from city to county, all the way up to state, all over North America. So for example, in Toronto, we help handle their property tax and their utilities capabilities. Whereas in North Carolina, we power the MyNC DMV functionality. I see there's a couple of North Carolinians on the call, so you're probably well familiar with the MyNC DMV. Within that platform, you have the ability to register for your vehicle. You can renew your driver's license. You can even do things like change your organ donor status or register to vote. In the state of Alabama, we've worked with their Health and Human Services to help power some and streamline some of their functionality when it comes to applicants who need TANF assistance from the state. And so through our platform, they're able to very easily go in, apply for that assistance, and then make its way all the way to a caseworker through some automated processes to allow them to work with that caseworker for the approval. One of the big benefits of the PayIt platform is the flexibility of it. I mentioned earlier with Toronto, where we're doing utilities and property tax. Those may not be the same government agency, but it is one platform for the user. Bill mentioned earlier that users want easy. They want to be able to jump in as quickly as possible and tackle the things that they do. In my state, I can't be aware of all of the different agencies at the city and the county and the state level. I just know what objectives I need to tackle. And so through the PayIt platform, we're able to bring multiple agencies at the city, county, or state level all into one single pane of glass for that citizen. So I can log in and I can tackle my property tax details. I can look up my parcel ID. I can make the payment on my property tax. Simultaneously, I can also jump in and I can tackle my water bill as well, whereas that might be two different agencies. Prior to PayIt coming along, this was kind of a pipe dream for a lot of different government agencies to be able to consolidate that into one place. So we're really thrilled to be able to bring that across, easily remit those funds to the appropriate agencies based off of those transactions, and make it a lot easier for their day-to-day lives in the back office. On the citizen side, there's a number of different features that we've brought into the platform, but I wanted to talk today about the Gov Wallet. And the Gov Wallet is an important part of our kind of profile within the PayIt platform that allows residents to very easily store all of their information that might be pertinent to a single or multiple government agencies. The Gov Wallet allows individuals to manage all of their payment types within the system, add new payment types, edit payment types, delete payment types. It allows them to sign up for automatic payments within the system and payment plans if appropriate as well, if the government agency offers that, such as for property tax, where I might have a big bill coming up in the year and I want to amortize that across 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months. It allows me to store personal documents such as vehicle registrations. We have a client on our system that during the pandemic had some logistics with issues with getting the stickers out for license plates. And so if you're pulled over in that state and your registration shows as invalid on your license plate, you can actually use the Gov Wallet for PayIt to show it to that police officer that your vehicle is actually registered and the registration has been complete. It allows me to access all of the receipts across my platform, all my linked properties, vehicles, and even vehicle details that we have through some of the API integrations that we leverage, not only with third-party vendors, but also with our agency's systems of record. And this is a single Gov Wallet across all of our interfaces. So my login pulls back that Gov Wallet, regardless of if I'm paying for a vacation home in Michigan or if I'm at my house in South Carolina as well. One of the big things that Bill mentioned that I definitely align with is making sure that we meet citizens where they are, that accessibility is critical for us to be able to accomplish anything we need to in a digital landscape. That means that we need to be available through any channel that users want to be able to access us through. During the pandemic, in the very early days, I got a phone call from my mother. My mom's in her late 60s, and I didn't answer it the first time. And I immediately got another phone call after. And so I thought, uh-oh, something must be going on. No, it's April of 2020, a little bit concerned about that. So I call her back. And she says, Ethan, I just downloaded a new app and I want to make sure that it's safe to put my information in here. So I said, okay, yeah, I'm glad you called. What's the app? And she said, it's Instacart. I said, okay, what information are you concerned about putting in there? And she said, well, should I put my address in it? And I kind of looked up a little bit and rolled back in my chair and I thought, Mom, I literally have no idea how they're going to deliver your groceries if you don't give them your address. I think you're okay to put that in there. So I got off the phone with her and I started thinking about it, shaking my head a bit. But in reality, it was actually pretty cool that her in her late 60s went and downloaded an application and started using it. And prior to the pandemic, there was a study by Bank of America that said, if a transaction was over $1,100, users would opt for a desktop interface in order to make that transaction. The concern was that they didn't feel like mobile was as secure as their PC. And so after the pandemic, I think it's pretty telling that the largest mortgage lender in the United States is still Rocket Mortgage, and people have no issue with going on a mobile device and doing a $300,000, $400,000, even $800,000 home loan using the Rocket Mortgage application. So we're seeing a huge shift in adoption of more of these mobile channels within user accessibility and channel preference that we need to be able to have our functionality across the board. And APIs are a big key of that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now at PayIt, there's a process that we use when we're looking at whether it be new integrations or new products that we can bring to the PayIt platform. And that process is human-centered design. You may have heard of this also as design thinking. They're very similar concepts and ways of thinking about designing products. And it starts with empathy. I see we've got a bit of a typo there, but we'll emphasize empathy here for the purposes of this flow chart. It's walking a mile in your customer's shoes, understanding what are their needs, whether it be I need this, I need that, but also the latent needs of that citizen. What are they doing while they're utilizing the product that they don't recognize that they need out of it? and that can come out of observation. From there, our product and design teams work on defining what that problem might be. That's the concept of getting to the 5 whys, where after you ask that 5th why, it enables you to truly understand what is the customer asking for and what is the true root of the problem that we need to solve. From there, we go to ideation. And ideation is full of brainstorming and sticky notes. In fact, I think that at this point, PayIt should probably invest in 3M. We purchase as many sticky notes as humanly possible, and I get a lot of the expense reports for those sticky notes. So it's great to see how much we can utilize that in order to help think of all of the creative ways that we can solve that problem that we've ultimately determined is the root problem. From there, we go to prototyping, and that's where we do mock-ups. And a prototype can be a simple screen with a couple of click-throughs. It can be a full mobile application that we built out in order to test out our theories and understand. From there, we do go to testing, and that's where you put it into a user's hands and you see, is option A better? Is option B better? Is option C better? And once we work through that, we hand that over to our engineering teams, we build that, deliver that, and then we start back over at that empathy phase, understanding how can we help solve those issues all over again. This exists not only in product features that we have, but also how do we integrate? What data do we need in order to make this product a true thing that people are going to want to adopt, that they're going to want to use? And so it starts with that persona, that use case, and then we work our way back to the inputs that we need. And oftentimes that winds up with a new service that we have to stand up, a new integration that we have to have via API to keep that as performant as possible. So let's get to the root of it. How can APIs help enhance that customer or citizen experience? And this is that slide I warned you about earlier. I promise it's going to be fast. This will help out set up the rest of the discussion. But I wanted to break APIs kind of up into 3 different areas. So the first is our system APIs. And system APIs are very aptly named. They talk back to the system of record. And so these are APIs that are able to pull back core details from that system of record, parcel ID, bill amount, et cetera, and are that first layer of APIs on top of that system. The next one is process APIs. And these are APIs that interact with and shape data within a single system or even across systems. So it helps break down some of the data silos that I think many of us on the call are familiar with. And they're created here without a dependence on the source systems from which that data originates, those system APIs. So I'll talk in a little bit about how PayIt uses some of these APIs as well. The last one is the experience APIs. And experience APIs are how we can configure data to the end user, to the citizen of the platform, or even administrative users for some of our administrative features that we have on the platform. You can think of an experience API. The easiest example I can think of with that is as I tap on the camera app on my phone. What that does is it talks to a process API that says, here are all of the things that Ethan can do on his phone. So we can zoom in and out. We can adjust the flash. We can add a filter onto that photo that he's taking, and it brings up the UI of whatever I'm pointing the camera at. It talks to a system API to turn on the camera at that point in time. And so my experience as the end user, I just want to be able to tap and take a photo. I don't think about all of these other APIs that are helping power that experience. So we use APIs pretty religiously within PayIt, and I wanted to share a little bit of how we do that today. This is within the Gov Wallet, and this is on my NCDMV where I have my vehicle details. And so a couple examples of system APIs, if we look down there at the registration details, we have information about the expiration date. We have the county that the vehicle is located in. We have information about the license plate and the VIN number of that vehicle. Up there on the top right, we have a couple examples of process APIs. So for example, this user is enrolled in e-billing. What happens when I enroll in e-billing is that kicks off a flag that says Ethan just signed up for e-billing, and that then talks to our notification service, another process API. So when that e-bill is available, it's going to send off an email to me letting me know that my vehicle registration is upcoming soon. So an example of two process APIs that can then talk to each other. And all of this is brought forward by those experience APIs, the ability for us to normalize some of those data sets that are coming from a system of record or other process APIs to show in that user interface and make it as easy for citizens as possible to view and understand the data that they're looking at. So I'll give you another example of how other industries are shaping consumer expectations with APIs. And I love this one. So we're all going to go on vacation for a couple of minutes here. We're going to close our eyes and pretend that we just booked a huge trip to Disney World. It's going to be awesome. I actually think the Food and Wine Festival is going on at Epcot right now, so we can just pretend that we're going to that instead. And so 2 weeks before you're about to get on the plane to Disney World, you get a little box in the mail. And in that box are a couple of wristbands, these little things that you see on the screen, the gray thing on the side with Mickey Mouse's face on it. And those wristbands are labeled for everybody in your party that's about to go to Disney World. So a couple of weeks go by, you hop on a plane, you get into the resort, you go up to the door that your room is at the resort, and you swipe your hand in front of the door, and that wristband unlocks the door. The next morning you wake up bright and early and you want to go to the park. And so you get up to the front gates of the park and you use that same wristband, which then tells the park that you have tickets for that day and you're eligible to entry into the park. So you go in, you jump onto a ride, you actually have the lightning lane pass. And so you get up to the gates for the lightning lane and you can use the same wristband for the lightning lane functionality. Later on, you're pretty hungry, you stop at a food stand and you get a bunch of popcorn and a hamburger and some French fries. And you can use your wristband, your magic band, in order to pay for all of that food. So you go back on some rides, you get done, there's a really funny photo that you want to purchase. And so you can then use your wristband to not only purchase that photo at the end of the ride, but then it's going to take that photo and upload it into your Disney profile so you can save that and you can print it off when you get home. Later on that evening, fireworks are going off in front of the castle, and your wristband lights up the same color as the fireworks: red, blue, green, yellow, red, blue, green. And so this is an example of how Disney has utilized APIs in every step of that experience in order to not only understand who you are, but where you are in the park, what you're doing in the park, and ultimately what permissions that you have with the park as well. This helps create a much more streamlined process utilizing these real-time APIs, talking back to the hotel lock on the door, the payment processing system that they have, the permission system for if you have entry into the park or not. All of these different ways to create a much more streamlined user experience and ultimately happier customers. I read that this enabled Disney to bring in another 15,000 of the people into the park every single day because of the processes that it's been able to free up utilizing APIs throughout. And ultimately, it makes customers a lot happier too, because they don't have to bring a whole bunch of extra ancillary things with them, wallet, purses, etc. They have all of it loaded onto that magic band. So there's a number of different ways that people can benefit from this API first mentality. I wanted to talk about 6 of these and how PayIt leverages this within our system. The first one is at that security layer. Now, there's all sorts of different identity providers out there. There's different security solutions like Okta, et cetera. PayIt can leverage security within our platform utilizing APIs to know who you are and prove who you are when you go into the system. And that leverages itself into personalization. When I log in, I want to be sure that my experience is personalized. Do I have the right experiences? Is it pulling back the right data from the system of record that's about me? And APIs help us kind of keep some of that data security and transparency across systems to ensure that everything's talking to each other and we can personalize that experience as much as possible. APIs also assist on the automation side, being able to process what are typically manual tasks, but being able to move those very fluently throughout system and process API to system and process API. Writing back to systems of record, pulling data from systems of record, help us automate processes such as remittance reports and uploading that into the system of record so that every citation is paid appropriately very quickly. It also helps in communication. I mentioned one earlier with e-billing, being able to send that off and as an email to me. So when that date comes up, it knows to process that email over, and I know when to pay my bill. It helps on the reporting side to ensure that we have the right data and we can feel comfortable with that, whether it be for ad hoc reports, real-time data reports, et cetera. And lastly, to kind of talk back to what Bill mentioned earlier, on the innovation side, APIs help us innovate immensely, because as we look at the user journeys and the personas, what are we trying to solve? We can then think back to, well, what data do we have available, or what data do we need? And it can help us break down some of those intra-agency jurisdictional issues that we can sometimes see of being able to pull back all of this information to serve for the user's use case. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Sean and look forward to talking with you all more soon.
Well, Ethan, just a tremendous view on one, the art of the possible, and ultimately kind of where we are today and where we're headed. I would just say two items that really resonated with me among a host of good content that you presented really was a twofold. One, this opportunity for multi-jurisdictional use. Just as one example, I'm from the state of Oregon, 24 years in state government service. We have 100 state agencies. We have 36 counties, 241 cities, over 1,000 special districts, all of them serving about 4 million people, the same 4 million people who all interact with government in a variety of different ways. And again, they don't want to have to figure out the maze of government service delivery. So yeah, that was one point. The second is meeting your customers where they are. Of course, as government entities, we don't get to choose our customers. We don't get to choose the easy customers to serve, right? So we're still going to have, in addition to these modern tools and capabilities, we're going to still have to have a brick and mortar option, a phone call option. We'll have constituents that may have a mobile phone but don't have a bank account, that are unbanked and need to be able to pay using cash. So a whole variety of different user journeys, personas that need to be developed, again, to really capitalize on that transformation of government service delivery. So I really appreciate your thoughts and comments. I want to move forward in our discussion as we have limited time. Want to once again engage our audience. We have another poll question. I'd invite you to record your responses so we can get a feel for where you all are on this journey. So in your view, what is the top barrier to digital modernization at your agency? Is it adequate budget? Is it staffing constraints? The fact that decision makers lack the appetite for transformation? And then finally, limited in-house technical expertise. Look forward to your responses. We'll wait a few seconds and then share kind of the wisdom of the crowd, so to speak. So roughly, certainly in government, no surprise, adequate budget is always a barrier. Certainly this fact that we've got to prioritize with scarce resources. Kind of two even responses, staffing constraints, and it makes sense that would go hand in hand with limited in-house technical expertise. Clearly, government agencies at all levels have a variety of challenges they have to overcome. In part, that's why our speakers today are here to share their lessons learned and also to make people aware of their options to leverage the expertise of others outside our own particular agency. Well, let's move forward with a discussion with Ethan and Bill. So I've got a few questions to kind of get things started, and so I'd like to throw it out to the both of you. As a lead-in to our discussion, can you just share with our audience, take a couple minutes to highlight some of the challenges and pain points that state and local government organizations that the two of you serve or have worked with are really facing today? We got some of the direct response from our audience, but would love your thoughts on the matter as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Sean. Looking at that responses we got from the audience, what I took away was real interesting was you got staffing and also appetite. If we combine those two together, there was over 50% of our audience said, if you put those together, that's happens a lot because we're going APIs. We talked about the Disney experience with the wristbands. Excellent example. Ethan loved it. I want a Disney experience for government all day long. But there's a human element to that. Now you don't have someone taking up tickets at each ride, verifying this in the extra system. You ain't got to look up if you got the fast pass or not. You don't have. There's a human element, so that tells a good story of the results we got from our audience, staffing and appetite for modernization. So this reminds me of a story that I experienced this as well, but I heard it repeated yesterday as well. I went through the exact same thing. Do some type of modernization, you got to find what is the barrier. And it all comes down to something you might not even think about. So it's a challenge that I've seen over and over again for modernization, for using API like this, is down to the human element. With the technology, you can do it. But sometimes the human element, there's a blocker. So one example is law enforcement. You take, crash photos. We had a system to where the officer would have to take photos and they would print them out, and then they had to go over to the crime lab and go up to the state depository and stuff like that. There was a user, that was her job. She did that job for 20 some odd years. The officers would come in and bring the photos, and she would package them in a nice little thing. Then she would have another one pick them up and carry them somewhere. So we wanted to put in this new system to do it all automated, doing a version of API where we download to a cloud and automatically upload it. It would save countless amount of hours and time and effort. But you can imagine the person that was their job was very resistant. So I spent a lot of time talking to her about, hey, you could do something else. You can be more efficient and blah, blah. Still very, very resistant. But when we actually found out what was the barrier, it wasn't what we were thinking. She wasn't thinking losing her job. Was that the good looking officers wouldn't come out there and visit her anymore. So you never know what the barrier is. Sometimes it's not. The point of that story is it's not about technology. Technology can solve the problem, but the challenge is people and inertia in government processes, in the politics that is in government.
Yeah, I'd have to say I really agree with that, Bill. I think part of it is being able to break down some of those silos. Yes, we are kind of in this life cycle of aging systems, but it really requires a lot of thought leadership and understanding what is that journey going to be. What are our citizens demanding, and ultimately interest in adopting that more modern, flexible platform, whatever that may be.
I appreciate your thoughts on this opening topic. Let's move to move our discussion and focus on the API integration platforms themselves. So I'm going to turn to you, Bill, first. Just very briefly, if you were a state and local government CIO right now, what would excite you the most about having an API integration platform?
That's a great question. You could probably tell my opening commentary. I'm pretty excited about this stuff, but I would say that after listening to Ethan's, presentation, I'm even more excited. So I guess my quick answer to your question is what Ethan said. That's what excites me. This stuff that we're doing now is possible, and I hate to say it, talk about the pandemic again, but eventually we're going to have the technology discussion. We're not going to bring up the pandemic, but I don't think it's going to be a while because the pandemic allowed us to do so much. And what it did, the most important thing is not about technology. It allowed us to have conversations that were previously taboo. We couldn't do that. This is my data, this is your data, but we had to solve a need rapidly. So we had to break down those barriers. So now we discovered data bottlenecks that we couldn't even talk about before. It allowed us to have these conversations. Ethan talked about the central gov wallet. Awesome, really, really cool concept where government records and data that were previously isolated is difficult for different public users to access now become available through different APIs. So I'm excited about this potential. I'm mostly excited about the increased citizen interaction. And it's not just utilizing government services, sometimes the other way around. Citizens can report situations like a pothole or crime or traffic concern using API back into the systems. They can use the systems to get the services they need, but they can also provide value to government agencies, which is really cool. We've been doing that for a while. We got a 311 hotline and things like that. But it's so much, hey, you talking about your mother or grandmother downloading an app on her smartphone. It's not that uncommon for that interaction can happen. There's so many advantages. You combine that with IoT and GPS and NFC, digital wallets and mobile apps, and you can have APIs to find nearby police stations and cameras to report an issue and GPS to follow, all tied together. That I guess what I'm most excited about is the potential is limitless. You know, it allows central IT to become both a partner and a platform to the business, which we previously were only a purveyor of technology systems. You know, technology is the business and the business is technology, vice versa. This is coming. And I think what I'm also excited about, something I think we're going to see more of, is crowdsourcing. Real common in the private sector. We're going to see more of that in the public sector. So just as conceivably, residents in the crowdsourcing can develop their own apps with using public-facing data to do GPS from their smartphones for traffic cameras or IoTs, all these sensors that are things that are available that the government is making through public accessible data. If we don't have to develop internally, the public can do it for us, and we can utilize that. That's a whole new window of opportunity that I think we're going to see ramp up over the next few years.
Yeah, just to just jump in there, you know, Bill, I totally agree with you on the kind of increased citizen experience side, the communication side. There was an example out of Eastern Europe towards the beginning of the year. There was an app that was called the DIA app, and this was done by the Ukrainian government to kind of have one centralized wallet for everything that I need to work with my government about. But they opened up the APIs to that wallet to allow businesses to exchange tokens with citizens and allow for communication between citizen data and business data. So I could leverage that wallet in order to pay not only for some of my government payments, but also for payments at the local store as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for that kind of, like you said, crowdsourcing of data that is going to lead to even greater experiences and more opportunity for governments to understand how do we better serve our citizen market.
Really appreciate your collective thoughts on the value of APIs. Let's, in the interest of time, I want to make sure we leave some time at the end of our webinar for some audience questions. So I'm going to move on to emerging trends. If I can come back to some of the other questions I had for you in that API area, I will. But let's turn to you, Ethan. Maybe you can talk a bit about your thoughts on some emerging trends and how state and local government can use APIs in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing is that for a long time we had agencies that had these 30, 40, sometimes even 50-year-old legacy systems. I think I saw something about a COBOL engineer charging close to $2,000 an hour recently, and he was getting that in order to help work on some of these systems, which makes me think I need to go back to school. Or first find a place that's going to teach me some of that, which is going to be even harder. I think one of the biggest opportunities and emerging trends we're going to see is this revelation that it's easy to swap out different systems, vendors, management integrations, and not pigeonhole some of their systems and processes like we've seen in the past. It's going to help them provide more flexibility and understanding to that Disney experience of what is possible. How do we follow the value chain all the way through citizen engagement point A to point Z? And so I think we're going to see a lot more opportunity and how do we engage in more public-private partnerships, utilizing some of our API functionality, bringing more value into that citizen capabilities within our government services, and ultimately providing them a lot more information and communication around our functionality as well.
Very good, very good. Ethan, I'm going to stay with you and get your thoughts on, really the shifting expectations of consumers out there, and your thoughts on how those changing and shifting expectations will impact the future of APIs, certainly in the government space.
Yeah, I think Bill nailed it earlier when he said that customers expect this, citizens expect this. I travel a lot, and I think my most used app on my phone is the Delta app. I love where they've come as a company and as a brand in order to provide as much information as possible to make me feel comfortable and confident that this is the gate that my flight is going out of. This is the time. I had a flight last week that 15 minutes before boarding changed gates twice. But it was nice that I was getting push notifications in that application even before the gate agent was announcing the new gate. So I could pick up my bags and beat the rest of the crowd over to the gate and find a better seat closer to the boarding lane. We see this in so many different industries, from the Hilton or Marriott apps being able to access all sorts of information from those applications, the Delta app being able to plan and adjust and make purchases from all of that experience. Citizens expect their government to. We don't see those data silos. Bill mentioned it earlier that we don't understand some of the interjurisdictional issues with data sharing or anything like that. And I think that preference is going to become more prominent with citizens as we move forward, that they want that immediate gratification when they're making a payment. We've seen this really odd trend in bill pay where it's been dropping about 16% year over year. And that's the ability to go into your financial institution and set up all of your different bills that you have, and your financial institution handles that bill for you. What they're finding is that younger demographics are skewing because they'll go directly to Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, whoever it is, and they'll make that payment directly on their website because they want that reference number. They want confirmation that that payment has been made. They don't want the long delays. They want immediate, instant gratification. And I think that those expectations are going to start to become a lot more prominent in the government space here soon.
Very good, very good. What I'm gonna do now, Bill, I've got another question for you because I think it's important to hit on. But before I ask it, I'd like to invite our audience to begin posing their questions using the Q&A feature on our webinar platform. And while our audience begins to ask their questions, Bill, I want to turn to you and get your thoughts on the topic of robotic process automation. Just a quick lead in, of course, with government, we not only have 10, 20, 30, 40-year-old information systems, we have processes that are automated within those systems that haven't changed in 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. And yet we have this dramatically changing set of customer expectations on how government should serve people in the future. And there's a conflict there that's going to have to be resolved. And again, we at the same time have scarce resources. We have retiring workforce, and so we have to think about technologies and approaches like robotic process automation. So with that said, it is gaining interest in the government sector. In your thoughts, how does API architecture impact the use of RPA?
That's actually a very good question and well said, and it's a good segue to tack on to some of the comments that Ethan was making. Especially, I wish I had a counter and a ticker every time either one of us three said the word data silos today. I mean, quite a bit, and I would, we talked about the citizens don't want to hear about it, don't care, don't know where the data's at, but I wish I could say that data silos is going to go away in state and local government. It's not. They're there. It's just the structure of government. I'm embarrassed to admit how many millions of dollars I've wasted of taxpayers' money trying to combine data into a single system. We've been trying to do this for 10, 20 years. I'm at the point now it's not going to, which is okay. We don't have to with things like RPA, with things like advanced APIs, and in this concept of composable government. Using APIs to modularize government, and you can use these advanced API structures to gather the data from different places. The data can still be housed, maintained by using legacy systems, using the data owner in all the different spots, but we can create this one seamless interface with government as a service, so to speak. And I'm kind of working on that. And RPA allows that to happen. It allows this low code, no code to go, I know the data's here, but how do I get it to the citizens' needs when this is really part of another application that the citizens is in front of whatever office? So it's really cool that we can use these advanced APIs we don't have to have this centralized data. It's not needed. We quit fighting those battles, quit wasting that kind of money, use things like RPA combined with APIs that can reach into these other data sets to get this experience. And we can use this composable style government structure where every agency, sub-agency, that's this internal minutia with government can build their modular piece of the system that is a part of one user experience for the whole government. Kind of a unique way of looking at it, but I kind of see that's where we're heading in the future evolution of technology with state and local government.
Thank you for that, Bill. We do have a question from our audience, and it kind of goes back to some of our poll questions, and certainly the content that the two of you have shared. The question is, how does one get past the organizational inertia? Any suggestions based on your experience, either your past experience directly in government or Ethan as a service provider to government agencies?
Yeah, Bill, I'll actually let you jump with that first, and then I'll tack on some information at the end there.
Sure. I think does government agencies have inertia? No, never. We're the poster child for inertia. It is difficult. It is. Let's just acknowledge that it is difficult and acknowledge that it does happen. All right. So some of the ways to get around it is to quick wins. Do not try to boil the ocean. Old type things. How do you get the elephant win? Start off with quick wins. And Ethan's kind of talked about this earlier. You create one app that provides one value. Use that as an example, then you kind of build from there. If you try to do too much too fast, there's the example story I talked about earlier of the little old lady who wants the police officer to come visit her. That one little small thing can block an awesome project. If you let something like that happen, that's why you need to start small. Quick wins and move forward. I know that's a generic response, but that's what works. Not looking at the technology, knowing that there's going to be blockers to get those quick wins.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add to that is it can sometimes be difficult to see the forest through the trees as well, especially when that inertia is there. I think that if you have a partner that you can work with that can help you understand those quick wins, whatever those small opportunities might be, that's going to help you understand the vision a lot more and articulate that vision internally in order to get people championed around whatever those ideas are. But to Bill's point, start small. One thing can start to build a mountain. And so it's a great opportunity to take a look at what is that primary use case? What are we trying to solve for? And then get down to that level of 5 whys. Once you hit that point, everything else kind of falls into place. And having partners that can help you understand that, determine that, dictate that is going to be imperative to be able to provide that internally.
Sean, if you mind, I know we're running up on time, but let me double down on Ethan's comment about partners.
You've got about 20 seconds. You bet. Go ahead.
IT leaders, we want to do it ourselves. We want to build it and show our value because we're awesome and we're smart. You work with the right partner, you can show that quick win that it was happening somewhere else. So the quick win is already built for you. It's already there. Leverage that partnership to your advantage.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Bill. So, Ethan, I'm going to turn to you. Again, we're out of time here. We've got just a couple of minutes left. We could go on for an hour or more. We've talked about that in our pre-call. But that said, I would really like to invite you to provide our audience with key takeaways you'd like to leave them with before we close the webinar. Maybe 30 to 45 seconds each, and then I'll close things out. So, Ethan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we had one big thing to say, it would be to understand the citizen engagement model. Start with that user journey, start with that persona, and then understand and walk back what data is going to be important for us to provide in order to have a great citizen experience. Without understanding that, you're going to wind up in a situation where you've got a mountain of data and you're not sure how to sift through that. You're not sure how to collaborate those data points together. You're not sure how to create the APIs or work with a partner to create those APIs that help provide that experience. So to Bill's point, start small, start with that customer journey, and then continue from there.
Thank you, Ethan. And Bill, 30 seconds to you. What are your parting thoughts for our audience?
To a To a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So my parting thoughts is, don't try to fix a solution with technology if you don't know what the end result is. Start with the user experience first, find out what the needs are, and then build the technology around it. We got to stop. I need X, Y, Z technology to put in place because it's going to fix some problem that I may not know exists. The worst thing you can do is implement technology that doesn't produce results that someone else was expecting to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen. So I want to be respectful of our time commitment. With that, we'll have to wrap things up here. In closing, I would just like to thank both of you, Ethan Cunningham and Bill Riles, for sharing your insights today. Again, we could have a second or third webinar to learn from both of you. I also want to thank PayIt for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And finally, I want to thank our audience for spending your valuable time with us. We look forward to seeing you all again at another government technology event in the future. If you would like to download your certificate of attendance, you can do so now by clicking on the certification icon at the bottom of the screen. I wish you all a great day. And again, Ethan and Bill, it's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot from both of you.
Thanks so much, Sean.